a progressive metal band from LA. They were formed in 1990 and have released 5 albums in the period of time since then, during which time they've had one change of member. They're generally known for the technical complexity of their music and the dark and disturbing lyrics and videos to match. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the fifth and most recent album by Tool. And it was apparently 13, well, it was 13 years after the previous one, and apparently a lot of that time was spent making the album, so they poured a lot of time and effort into this album. This is my first listen to this album, but not to Tool, because I've reviewed two, maybe three of their albums before, in previous incarnations of me doing reviews. So let's get some description going then. There are at times atmospheric sound effects, some I believe by the avant-garde musician Lustward. Most of the rest is guitar, bass, and drums. There's not a lot of tune or solo lines going on here. And it could be described as metal, but it's not that heavy. There are, there is heaviness at times, but often it's quite kind of emptied out and more atmospheric. It's harmonically generally quite straightforward. So they haven't got much of the metal obsession, the modern metal obsession with semitones and augmented fourths that around, which gives it a very kind of menacing harmonic feel. This is more normal, I would say. But rhythmically is where it becomes complex. So often unusual patterns, in fact, most of the time, unusual patterns. I amuse myself trying to count the number of beats in the cycles here. Bars might not be the right word, but it could be. So there's definitely 7s, 11s, I think 14 at least at one point. Most of these are made up of 3s and 2s, or at least that's the way I view it. So, for example, one of the patterns I'm fairly sure was 3 3 3 3 2. So it goes diddle 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 diddle, and which then kind of if you take out the in between bits goes da 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 like that, and that's 14 altogether with the 3 3 3 3 and 2. A lot of it seems to be about these kind of rhythms. There's also at times there's polyrhythms and polymeters. Now I sound clever being able to say those words, but I can never remember the difference between them. But one of them is having bars that take the same length of time, but people playing in different time signatures within that bar. I think that's polyrhythms, and our polymeters is where they're actually playing the beats at the same times as each other, but they're playing different bar lengths, so the bars kind of overlap with each other. And it's also got things that move in and out of phase with each other as well, and a lot of this technical cleverness going on in the rhythms is very, very tight and accurate. So these hits are incredibly precise. Most of the tracks are made up of multiple different sections, which are strung together one after another, which is so those two things together, three things: the atmospheric feel of some of it, the complex rhythms, and the multiple sections, all kind of scream progressive to me. Apparently, this is all musically developed before the lyrics are written and formed. And the lyrics are surprisingly quite clear and, well, certainly not particularly guttural voice. There's not screaming or shouting or growling stuff. It's pretty much singing in here. There's a slight nasality to his voice, but not too bad. This seems to be just a thing that is particularly popular. I can't work my way around that. Particularly popular in US metal. Got there at last. And I blame the influence of Metallica and of course Nickelback as well. Nasal voicing. The lyrics. So this was a big shocker for me compared with other Tool albums that I've reviewed and listened to, they're almost safe for work. They're quite vague and stream of consciousness, but not particularly challenging or difficult. And this is definitely a contrast to some of the earlier albums that I've heard, where some of the lyrics are very difficult. Invincible, for example, I believe is about getting old, but sometimes it's kind of quite hard to work out because there's kind of vague phrases kind of patch together what they're on about through that phrases. So, as I've indicated in the past, I've struggled with Tool with their other albums, not only with the disturbing content that they've had, but also the production is harsh and very metallic in the kind of sense that a lot of the sounds sound like they've been made by instruments made of steel rather than of wood. It's just the way the tone has been done. So this album is warmer, in my opinion, than any of the previous ones that I've heard, and is to a large extent actually my kind of metal. It's progressive, it's complex, it's atmospheric. It takes its time. It's got thought to the music behind it. It's a little on the clinical side at times, but it's so accurate. It's not quite got the richness of people might have come across Dream Theater, maybe fewer people have come across Arian, where there's a lot of stuff going on in their albums. But there is quite a reasonable amount of stuff going on here. The digital version of this album has little interludes, and I would say it's better than the CD version, which has main tracks. Those interludes I add quite a bit to the album. But there are, other elements of this where there is some variety. So the title track is the first track on the album, and is like basically a 10-minute build-up with an almost world music feel at times. And this kind of feel of world music kind of infiltrates in, it's infused here and there in other parts of the album as well. The heaviest track is, I don't know how you pronounce it, Tempest, but it's got a 7 at the start. And just to pull out another of the tracks, Chocolate Chip Trip is a good track. It's one of my favorites on the album, which is basically a percussion instrumental. So, I actually quite enjoyed this album. I was kind of slightly dreading it from my past experiences of Tool, and I will be coming back to some of those albums later in the list, and we'll see if my opinions changed over the intervening years. But this one I can embrace. It's a pretty good album, so I like it. And as always, at this stage, please tell me what you think of this album by leaving a comment. And that's it from me for now.